Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first class of Intro to Visual Arts. I'm going to be one of your tutors. My name is Andrea Huang, and I'm currently a junior at Stuyvesant High School. I'm about to go into my senior year.
Hello, my name is Stephy. Chen. I'm also a rising senior at Stuyvesant High School. I'll also be one of your tutors.
So I guess a little bit more about ourselves. I guess the things that I like to do in art are like watercolor. I do a lot of traditional art, but I've also been dabbling in some more like digital stuff, and have recently been also like I also started off with like colored pencils and stuff, so I'm really familiar with that kind of stuff. I've been drawing since like I could hold a pencil, like really young. So I don't remember how old I was when I started drawing, and I guess some stuff I do outside of art is like I do debate, and yeah, like fun stuff.
Like Andrea, I've been drawing since I was like very young. I think I started like taking art classes when I was around 5th or 6th grade. So in my art classes, I focused a lot on acrylic painting. So like I guess one of my kind of like specialties is like painting. Um, uh, I also worked with color pencil when I was starting out, and I also do a lot of I use graphite to do a lot of like landscape paintings, like landscape pictures, and I also do like a lot of still life. So I focus on a lot of like objects and like proportions and how it looks in relation to other objects. So yeah, I'm also a debater, and both Andrea and I both have worked actually on this like theater production at our school for 2 years. So that's something we also do other than just like art.
So I guess some stuff to know about this course is that when we sent out the form to survey how well, or I guess how familiar y'all are with drawing and stuff like that, we noticed that there are some more experienced people here, but there are also like straight up beginners, which is fine because this course is meant for beginners, and eventually we'll reach a semi like it won't ever get too difficult to the point where you need to buy like extra supplies or anything like that. But just know that like for those of you who are more experienced, please be like I guess aware that there are beginners in this class. So like bear with us as we like move along a little bit slowly in the beginning to just to get the basics down and make sure that everyone's on the same page. Okay, so for our do now, I guess like the first exercise to start off right off the bat, we'll give you 2 to 3 minutes to draw a teacup. And this can be like however you want to draw a teacup. It can just be like pencil and paper. It doesn't have to be colors on it, or anything like that. So yeah. Okay, so that was around 2 minutes. It doesn't have to be super perfect or anything like that, and you don't really need to show us right now, but we'll ask you at the end of class to take a picture of all the drawings you did during class, and put them and submit them on Google Classroom. Hopefully you all know how to do that, right? Yeah, okay, so if you can find, I guess, a video in one of like, I guess like a lot of these like icons and stuff, called Andrea's Drawing, that's where I'm gonna be like doing most of the demonstration and drawing stuff, so you can see like here. So you can see what I'm doing at the same time. Is everyone okay?
I think they should pin the video.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, this works too. That's fine. Yeah, so some very basic things that we have to like learn first is like how to do good line art. So when you draw and stuff, obviously you use lines. My handwriting's really bad, but there are like a lot of it sounds really simple, but really good and really clean line art is gonna make a lot of your is going to make a difference in the how like good your drawing looks at the very end. So some very basic tips for drawing like straight lines, for example, is to draw towards yourself, right? Like, so if you draw like this, right? So for example, if I do this, right, the line's kind of curved. and it's like not really what I want, right? So if I have more control, if I like draw towards myself like this, you see, like the line's a lot more straight, and it's a lot like, it's like the same width, like the same consistency, right? It's like the same. It's like a line. It's like a line that you like draw with a ruler, but it's like it's stable. It's not like super duper straight. If I'm sure if you look really close, it's like not gonna be straight, but it's close enough that it's like good enough for like I guess quick drawings and stuff like that. So I want everyone to like kind of practice like drawing towards yourself, because that's like really important in understanding like how to draw good line art and stuff, and making sure that your lines are I guess not straight necessarily, but like consistent throughout, which means that it's kind of the same thickness throughout the entire thing. Also, if you have any questions, make sure you put them in the chat to Steffi and not to me, because I won't be checking the chat at the same time as drawing and stuff, because that's like too many things to do at the same time. Is everyone okay with that? So if you have any questions,
Are they able to do the chat? Because I'm
no,
not
they can
able
message you privately. They can message you privately.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll go over how to submit on Google Classroom later at the end. Just a quick rundown. So practice towards yourself. The next thing we have to learn is line values, and values means basically how dark or how like light the line is, right? So if you press your pencil down really hard, it's gonna look really dark, right? So like if you do this, it's gonna be really dark and like the line is really thick. But if you like hold it lightly, right? So if you have like a really loose hand and you draw like this, it's a really light line. You can barely see it, but it's there, right? And you can use these two different types of lines for like different things. So sometimes I like to use a really light line that you can barely see as like guidelines if I'm like not really sure if I'm on a line yet, or if I'm sketching something and I'm like not 100% sure if I want to draw like exactly that way. I'll draw in really light lines so it'll be easier to erase later, and it's gonna be less messy if in like the final piece when when like the guidelines are really light. And then for the really dark lines, those lines are for when you really want like to emphasize something and you want to make a line really and you want to make a line very like strong and like bold per se. So depending on how heavy or how light you want the line to be, you press firmer or you don't press firmer. So I want people to practice drawing 4 lines in decreasing thickness. So the first line is really heavy, second line is a little bit lighter, and the third line is a little bit lighter, and then the fourth line is as light as you possibly can go. So like you don't put any force, you like kind of just let your pencil like go across the paper. Like you don't really like, you don't have to press down or anything like that. Okay, is everyone good? So let me know if I'm going a little too fast for some people. I'm not sure. The next thing we're gonna learn how to draw is draw curves or draw circles, kind of like circles, but like they're not gonna be perfect because they're kind of like you're not using a compass or a tool or anything. You're just using your hands to draw like a circle quickly. So the best way, in my opinion, to draw a circle, freehand is, and freehand means like without any tools. The best way to draw a circle is to draw a square first. It sounds really strange, but like bear with me. So first you have to draw guidelines, right? You draw a square using, it's not exactly a square, but it's like close enough. Use your very light, make sure it's really light so you can like erase it later when it's like, once you draw your circle. Next, after you draw your square, you find the middle of each line, each side of the square, right? So you see how like this is the middle of this like side, and then you're gonna have to connect the middle points, like, so you have to connect these 2 points together, but in a curve, right? So it's this way it's easier to draw like 4 parts of a circle rather than a whole circle at the same time. It's just like not really focusing, I'm sorry. So yeah, it like, again, it's not gonna be perfect, but it's gonna be like close enough to a circle that's like workable. Okay, it's a little bit like lumpy, but it's okay. The point is that it's like a close enough way to draw a circle that you, after you draw like your general shape, you can go back and you make the lines darker. This way, once you're done drawing, like you're outlining your circle, you can erase the guidelines of the square that you drew before. And it's easier to erase really light lines without like much pressure or anything like that. So that's why we use very light lines to begin with for the square. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. For those of you who are just joining, make sure if you have questions to ask in the chat to Stephy Chen instead of me, because I won't necessarily be looking at the chat while teaching at the same time. So yeah, that's generally like kind of line art and stuff. This square method also works for like ovals. But to draw like an oval, you have to do a rectangle instead of a square. So let's say we want to make, that's a really bad line. Okay, so let's say we want to make a rectangle, like an oval that's like this, like it fills in this space here, right? Same method, find the midpoints, find the middle of each of the sides, and then you connect the sides, or you connect the middles of each side. Also, your hand naturally wants to do this when you draw. So if you're like drawing the bottom part of like the oval, I recommend turning your paper over so your hand can actually go with it. Like that. So drawing an oval is going to come in handy later when we do our like final drawing for today. Yeah. That's like how to do basic line art and basic shapes, like basic hard shapes. The next thing we're going to learn is how to do shading. So many of you wanted to learn how to do shading, and I understand that's really important to learn how to make things look 3D when you're first starting out to draw. First learning how to draw. So we're gonna push this back a little bit. I'm gonna teach you 6 different ways to shade. Well, it's kind of like 4 different ways, but the last method has other like ways you can do it. So first thing you have to understand about shading is that the way that shading works, it's like when light hits an object, it creates a shadow on the other side. So like if you're outside on the park on a sunny day, you see your shadow on the ground because that's where the light isn't like hitting the ground, right? So it's like, imagine the shadow is just like where there is no light. For the sake of the demonstration today, we're gonna say the light source is here, right? So like, let's say there's a light coming from over here. The light source is going to come from over here. So when the light comes down, right, it's gonna let's say for this circle here, right? Imagine it's a ball. When light comes down, it's gonna hit the ball here. It's gonna be light here at the top here, but then the back here is gonna be dark, and that's where the shading is gonna be. That's where the shadow is, right? So we gotta color in this part in the back to make it darker than this part, which is the front. So before we begin coloring in these like spheres, we're gonna like do a little bit of practice to see your control, like to test out your control of your pencil. What's really important when you're drawing like smooth shading and smooth objects is to create something called a gradient. And gradients are basically going from very dark to very light. Okay, so I want you to take your pencil, draw a rectangle like this, like a bar here, and then you divide the bar into like 4 sections like that. Next, you color in this bar, this box here, as dark as you possibly can. Make it super duper dark. Okay. Next one here, we're gonna make it slightly less dark, but still pretty dark. I would say like you fill in the square, but you don't go over it twice. You only go over it 1 time. And then here, we do a light coloring of the box, like that. And then for the last one, you leave it white. Okay. You see how it like goes from dark to light? When you practice a gradient, you want to blend out these sections here, right? You see it kind of like it goes into each other, right? You have to like kind of like use your pencil to drag it out a little bit. Same thing here. You go light. Don't make sure you don't go too dark here. Use your pencil lightly, and make sure that it's like smooth enough when you drag your pencil out. And then finally here, again, make it really light, like your pencil is barely touching the paper. The line here is a little bit darker because I drew the line like that, but it's okay. Generally, this is what you kind of want to get, where it's really dark on one side and really light on this side. It's going to be really important when you draw onto like spheres, which are more difficult shapes, that you know how to do gradients and you know how to go from, like, you have to go smoothly from dark to light. So the first technique we're going to learn for shading is called hatching. It's called hatching, spelled with an H. And it's basically like drawing a bunch of lines that represent shading. So when you draw a line naturally, right, if you notice, it's really hard to tell on camera right now, but if you like draw a quick line like this, the part where you start is darker than the part where you end, right? Because your pencil kind of goes upward a little bit, so it's like lighter here, but it's darker at the start. Which means that when you do hatching, you want to start where the darkest part of the sphere is going to be, and then you're going to end up where the lightest part is to be. But you have to do it like, you have to like lift your pencil up like this. It's like a flick of the wrist. So when you do hatching, you start from the bottom left corner, because remember the light is over here, which means the light is going to hit this part of this ball, right? For hatching, you just want to go up like this, all in the same direction. Does that kind of make sense to everyone? The way it works is that the way that you lift your pencil up, it's gonna look lighter here. So it's kind of like, it's gonna be like kind of a gradient where it sorta is lighter here, but it's not as dark, but also it's like not like a harsh line that says this is where the dark part starts, where the middle part starts, and this is where the light part is. You just have to go over it a few times to make it like look good. Personally, I think that hatching, because it's just about drawing straight lines, sometimes it's really easy to get outside of like the circle that you drew before. So in my opinion, hatching is better for like straight lines and like cubes and things that have like sharp edges and not like spheres necessarily. The next thing we're going to learn is called cross hatching, which is, it starts off the same as hatching, right? You like do a few lines in one direction, but then the cross part comes in when you go in another direction, like this. And remember, you want to start where the darkest part of the shadow is, right? It's kind of like a crescent moon shape. Cross hatching works really well on like rounded objects because it's really easy to make a gradient with cross hatching. So for example, if you do this, right, this part where they meet, this part here, is going to be darker than this part here, which is the medium shade, and this is the light shade, right? It's kind of like a natural gradient that happens with just your pencil. And it's really good for adding texture to your artworks because it's not super smooth. It looks a little bit like, it's also really fast to do when it comes to like, you only really need your pencil for the shading part. And it's a little bit more interesting than just hatching per se. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, cool. The last thing we're gonna do is probably something that's a little bit more natural, in my opinion, when people first like think of shading. It's something called the contour line. So these contour lines basically follow the shape of the whatever thing you're drawing, right? So we're drawing like a ball, right? So it's like a sphere and it's like circular. So you follow the shape of the ball and you go like this. And remember, you only want to do like the bottom left corner. You only want to color in the bottom left corner. And make it darker in the back compared to like the middle part, which is here. Contour lining is really fast and it's really easy because it works with like basically any shape. And yeah. Okay, cool. So the next thing, I guess the next three that we're gonna do is with a technique called blending. And it's gonna probably give you what you think of when you think of shading. It's like it becomes really smooth and it becomes like there's less lines, right? You see a lot of lines here because I just used a pencil and I didn't really use anything else. Pencils create lines. So the first step to creating any blended like shading is to create contour lines or like just color stuff in general, right? So this whole row here is going to be the blending row. So for this one here, you want to draw contour lines. It doesn't have to be super perfect, it's fine. But the thing is though, how do you want to like blend it, right? So we kind of want to smudge the graphite in our pencil that's on the paper right now. You want to smudge it around so it kind of like blends in together. But you don't want to use your finger because your finger contains oil, and if your oil gets on your paper, it's gonna stain your paper and it's gonna be really gross. And also you don't want to get your finger dirty because that's just like nasty. So what you're gonna do is gonna take your tissue that we asked you all to prepare today. Is like a regular tissue, right? I personally like folding it like over my finger so it becomes like this. It like covers my finger-ish, right? So I can use my finger to like basically, yeah, kind of like this. It doesn't have to be perfect or anything. Just cover your finger with it, right? And you're gonna use this tissue to blend out the like graphite here. You see, automatically it becomes like smoother, and the lines start disappearing a little bit. Like maybe some of the harder lines that I put in earlier are still staying there, but it looks a lot smoother compared to this one, right? Your tissue does get a little dirty, so make sure you don't like blow your nose into this or anything. So this is the tissue. And yeah, but you can see that it's kind of messy because it goes outside the lines. The tissue is really big, and it's just like kind of hard to control, especially when you like eventually have to draw smaller drawings or something like that. So what we can do is you can use a Q-tip. And it's basically the same thing, except it's a smaller surface area now. So the Q-tip compared to the tissue is a lot smaller, and therefore you have a lot more control in where you blend and how hard you blend it. So it starts out the same way. You draw contour lines that follow the shape of the ball. It's getting punched. Okay. So take your Q-tip, and I personally like starting from the back where there is the most graphite and there's like the most like pigment there. Like that, and then you slowly go up. Kind of bring it up on the sides too, a little bit. But yeah, you see how there's not as much outside of the lines, and the lines are like the dark area here is really sharp, and it's like really dark here compared to this one where everything kind of just like blended out, like a little bit too much in my opinion, because I don't really have that much control of my tissue. The Q-tip lets you kind of control everything in like one spot, so it's like easier. And the final, I guess, thing that I wanted to show you today that you don't have to do because we didn't ask you to prepare this equipment because it's like extra tools and stuff that most of you probably don't have. This is called a blender stump, and it's basically a piece of paper that's like rolled up really tightly. You can buy these like at like art stores and stuff like that, but and they're supposed to be like professional or something like that. But I think that we wanted to show you the Q-tip and the tissue option today to tell you that you don't really need special supplies if you have like things like at home that like do the same job. Sure, like the blender stump is like pointier, so it's like easier to like get to small areas that like need blending and need shading and stuff. But the Q-tip like does basically the same job, and we just wanted to show you that there's like alternatives out there that you can use in your own house that like you don't need to buy supplies for. Art is expensive, like doing art is really expensive, but in my opinion, like making sure that your basic skills are like good to begin with is more important than buying expensive art supplies. And that's something that we want to kind of take away. That's like kind of like a lesson that we want you all to take away from today's lesson, or I guess the course in general, is that we don't really need to use expensive art equipment to do good art, especially at this beginner level. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is how to draw 3D shapes. Oh. You can see stuff. Okay, it's fine. So, drawing 3D shapes. Well, the first thing well, we already did a sphere, so you know how to draw a sphere, like how to draw a ball, like that. And it's basically the same thing for like most round objects. The next thing we want to teach is how to draw a cube. Cubes are pretty easy because cubes are just like squares that have like multiple sides, right? So first thing is to draw a square. It doesn't have to be perfect, it's just a square. Like that. And then you draw another square, but you draw it kind of like this. It's like off center. It's like a little bit, and then the meat in the middle has a little square here. Does that make sense? Okay, and then what you have to do now is connect the corners. So this corner, and you connect it with this corner here. This corner, you connect it with this corner here. And then this corner, you connect it with this corner here. This one, you could connect it, but unless you're drawing a clear cube, like a glass cube, for example, most of the time you won't see this part because it's behind. So you could erase these two lines, actually. Like that, and that's a cube. The same thing works for a rectangular prism. So start with a rectangle, right? And this time, instead of the bottom right, we'll go into the top right. Same thing. Draw a rectangle like that. It's a little bit wonky, that's okay. And then you connect the corners. And then you erase the parts that you don't need. Is that good with everyone? Okay, yeah. So the next shape, I guess, it's a little bit more challenging, but it's basically the same thing. We're gonna draw a cylinder, but we're gonna use two different skills that we just learned today. How to draw an oval and how to draw a cube to combine it together and make a cylinder. So as you know, a cylinder is basically like a cup, right? It's kind of like a circle and then it's like tall, right? Or like it could be short too, but it's basically a circle that has like a height to it. So, but when you like look at, so for example, when you look at this cup, unless you're looking at it like right from above, right? It's not going to be a circle. Like if you look in the camera right now, it looks like if you look at my camera right now where I'm speaking from, it's gonna look like an oval to you, like from like that perspective. It looks like an oval, right? And not exactly a circle. So we're gonna start by drawing two ovals. Well, and by ovals, I mean first draw rectangles and then we draw ovals, based on how we learned how to draw ovals today. Like that. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect because these are just sketches and they're easy to erase and fix. That's just an oval. And then you draw another oval underneath it. And it's the same shape and same size. Try your best to make it the same shape and size. Like that. It's a little bit off, but it's okay. Is everyone okay? Your two ovals, same size, same shape. Okay. So next thing, we're gonna connect this very edge of this oval with this edge of the oval with a straight line. And make sure to draw towards yourself if you want like a steady line. And then the same thing on this edge and this edge. Draw straight down. Like that. And then normally, again, there's like hidden lines that you won't be able to see if you're actually looking at a solid cylinder unless you're looking at a glass cylinder. So we can erase this line in the middle so it looks more like a cylinder now. And I prefer to go over my lines like this. And shading for a cylinder is pretty similar to a sphere, because if you like generally know how to color, like how to shade in a sphere and how to draw shadows for a sphere, you basically know how to like shade in for like any other shape. What you want to do is light source is up here, so the shadow is going to be back here, right? Again, do your best to make a gradient. Kind of like do it with a motion of like lifting your pencil up as you come closer to the right side of the cylinder, and make this part really dark. See, this is kind of like contour lining. And then we can blend it out with a Q-tip. Like that, kind of. That's generally what you want to do. Stephy, should we color in the, like, shade in the cube and stuff too?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do the rectangle here. So when the light hits the rectangle, right? Let's say, okay, let's move the light source now. Let's say the light source is like here-ish, right? So if the light source, like say the sun is here, right? If the light source hits this part, right, first, then this top part of the rectangular prism, or like the box, is gonna be the lightest. So you don't color it at all. And then down here, it like kind of hits it. It's like lighter. There's like a shadow, but it's not super dark. So we'll color in this part lightly. And then for back here, it's going to be the darkest back here because the light like does not hit the back part of the box. So I personally like starting with the darkest part. And then we can go in medium here. You can add subtle gradients and it'll like make your artwork pop a little bit more. So it's like not as flat. So you can see it's not like super noticeable, but there's a little bit of a gradient in the way I colored in this part. Like the top and the bottom are a little bit darker than the middle part, but that's just like the way I like to color stuff in general. But yeah, and you smooth everything out a little bit, clean stuff up, and that's generally how you like color in a rectangular prism, really in really basic steps. And this part, I could have made this part a little bit lighter, to be honest, but it's okay because this part is supposed to be. The main point is that different parts of the rectangular prism are gonna like be different darknesses and different lightnesses based on where the light hits the box. And also, you'll see that since there's a corner here, there's no gradient at the corner. You see here, because this part is round and it's smooth, there's kind of a gradient. It like goes like naturally into, like smooths itself into the lightness. This part is just like the straight line. There's a line here. You can see the line. You can see the very crisp line here, and that'll tell your viewer that is looking at your artwork that there's an edge there. There's an edge here, and there's an edge here, and there's an edge here. Okay, So we are nearing the last 15 minutes of class, which means that we will be doing, I guess, the final drawing for today. So in the beginning of class, we asked you to draw a teacup, just like randomly kind of, and because the reason we did that is because we wanted to show you how to apply the different skills that you learned today into drawing a teacup. Like that's like a 3 and like, yeah. So we first start off with an oval, again with a rectangle, like that, midpoints. Draw a big oval at the top, and then right underneath it, so like this is the middle part of the oval, right? Make sure you keep in mind where the middle is and you go straight down. We can draw another smaller oval here. It's kind of in the same location, but like further down a little bit. Okay. I like to erase my guidelines as I go, so there's less erasing to do at the very end. Yeah. So I kind of wanted to draw this, or I guess, okay, so it's kind of the same way we drew the cylinder. We drew two cylinders, two ovals, and they connect them together. But this time we're gonna make it a cup. So it's gonna connect these two edges in a curved shape, right? Make sure to practice the curve before you like commit to it. I like to perhaps do it a few times in like light ways, until I like the like lines, and then I'll like go back and I'll draw like in a darker line by pressing harder. And then you do the same thing on this side. Okay. So you can kind of see the cup now. And we can erase this part in the back, this arch in the back, because you don't really see that in real, like you don't see it if you're looking at the cup like this. Unless again, it's a clear cup and you can see through the cup. Next, we're gonna draw like a plate that goes like underneath the cup. Keep in mind to keep this part in the center, or I guess towards like the bottom-ish, right? We want to draw a big oval around this whole thing. It's a rectangle, kind of. Midpoint, 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 midpoint. Connect the midpoints. Kind of like that. It's not going to be perfect because we're freehanding, no tools, just your pencil in your hands. Kind of like that. And then you erase this part that's going through the cup because you don't see that. Clean up your guidelines a little bit. And you should kind of have this right now. And you can see that you can start seeing the teacup and the plate that comes with the teacup. Yeah, so next let's add the teacup handle. It's just like kind of like a half a heart shape here, or you can design your cup handle to be however you want it to be. I like to go down a little bit so it follows the shape of the curve, like that. And you draw the inside part. Like this. Okay. Now we can add a little bit more details. You can write whatever you want on the cup. Right now we're just gonna leave it plain probably. We can also add a foot to the base of the cup so it looks more realistic. If you look at cups, they have a little like ridge at the bottom to help the cups sit up straight or something like that. I don't know how cups work. And same thing for the plate. We can complete the plate a little bit by like drawing a little. Oh, something we forgot to go over before is when you want to connect 2 points together, like you want to connect this point, but it's like a really big like arc. I like to start it off by like going out a little bit, right? And then this part, I just have to connect these two, and it's a lot shorter than here to here. Like that. And it looks like a 3D plate now, kind of. Okay, so now let's do the shading part, which kind of brings everything to life. Light source up here, right? The first, I guess, most obvious place to shade is the outside of the cup here. The light's gonna hit the cup here, like let's say here, and the shading part is gonna be here. It's kind of the same way we shade the cylinder. We have to shade in this part. You see where my pencil is going? It's like here. You can use whatever method you want to shade with. I'm probably gonna go with the blended method. So I will use some contour lines, follow the shape of the cup, kind of make a gradient. Make a light gradient first, and then you can always go back and add more pigment. Like that. I'll blend it later actually. I'll just leave it as contour lines now. Okay. I'll wait a little bit to make sure everyone's. Okay. So next we have to shade in the inside of the cup, right? So when you think of like the inside of the cup, it's like kind of hard to imagine like where is the light gonna hit, right? So the inside of the cup is actually like this, right? It goes inside. And if you imagine the light hitting the cup, right, it follows down and it hits the inside of the cup here, right? Which means that the darkest part and where the shading has to be is on this side. Like for just this oval, we have to shade in from this side. Like that. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. So next, we can blend this out. For the big areas, we'll use the tissue to kind of make it go faster. And then we'll go in with the Q-tip to make it go easier.
Andrea, can you also do the shadow that on the
Oh,
bottom?
yeah, I'll do the shadow on the bottom of the plate too.
Oh no, as in like
For
of the cup.
Yeah. Okay. We'll also add some shading onto the handle. So like imagine where the light is gonna hit the handle. It's gonna hit the handle here, right? It's gonna hit the handle here. So we color in the places that are not where the light is gonna hit it. Like here and here. And the handle shading part is a little bit more tricky because it's hard to like, it's not intuitive. It's like not something it's not really where you would think the light is gonna hit, but it's gonna hit here and here. Okay. Cool. Next, just focusing. Okay. Next we're gonna shade in the plate. Outside, it's basically the same concept, right? The outside of the plate here, it's gonna be darkest in the back corner here where the light doesn't hit it, and it's gonna be lightest. It's gonna be lightest. Actually, no, it's gonna be pretty dark at the bottom of the plate because the bottom of the plate doesn't really, it's not really the light. The light doesn't really get to the bottom of the plate. So, yeah, but there should still be kind of a gradient. Like this bottom left corner should still be a little bit darker than the right corner, even though the right corner still has some shading to it. There's like, yeah, just like follow what I'm doing. It's like hard to explain. Why can you not see that? Okay. Do I have to hold it up and draw at the same time? Smudging goes outside the lines. We can clean it up later. Next, we're gonna draw the shadow, kind of that the cup creates when it hits the plate. So you kind of imagine the shape of the cup. It's like thinner here and it goes outwards a little bit, right? So you go from the base of the cup here. Kind of draw like general shape like that. What's really important here is when you're shading in a shadow that is cast onto another object, like for example, the floor or like in this case, a plate. This part here where it's closest to the object has to be darker than up here where it's farther away from the light. So as you can see, the way I'm shading it is that like this part here, as I go outwards, it's gonna be lighter. Okay. You see how that kind of makes sense? And then you blend it out as well. Well, like that. We can add some like more dimension here a little bit. Actually, not here. What am I doing? Kind of up here at the top corner because again, like here, there's kind of a lip to the plate. The light doesn't really hit it up here. It hits it more down here. You kind of just drag it down like that. And yeah, that's kind of generally what the cup looks like. What I like to do after that is I take a really sharp pencil when I'm done with the shading and everything, because after like blending out everything, the lines that I drew before are kind of like blended out too, and you can't really see them anymore, or they're like harder to see. So I like to go back in with a really sharp pencil, and I like to draw on the lines again.
Just before time runs out, I also drew a teacup as well following it.
Oh, really?
So can't really see it, but it's tiny. I've also posted an assignment. So basically it's where you can post all the photos. Oh, never mind. Andrea did the same assignment.
Yeah, I like programmed it to do. Yeah.
I deleted
Are you gonna delete it?
Yeah, I'll delete mine. So Andrea, you can tell them that you should post.
So you signed up for this class through Google Classroom, and once you go on classroom.google.com, you will see a classroom there, right, based on whatever email you use to sign up. And then in that classroom, if you scroll, the first thing you'll see is something called, it'll say academic tutor Andrea Huang posted a new assignment, day 1 - shading, right? If you click on that shading, if you click on the assignment, it'll like show you the instructions for today, and it'll say like, in the top right corner, it'll say, is it like attached?
There is no attachment. I can't see it.
What do you mean? You can't see it because you're a teacher.
Okay. There should be attachment. I don't know.
Yeah. It should say like in the top right corner. Oh, it says your work. It says your work in the top right corner once you click on the assignment. And it'll say plus add or create. So plus add or create, if you need help with using a computer, you should ask your parents for this. Click plus add or create, and then you can add files like pictures and stuff like that from your computer onto the website, and then you click submit or turn in, and it'll let us see what you turned in. So what we want you to do today is take a picture of the work you did, including the line work, the shading, like 6 different ways to shade, how to draw eclipse, how to draw like those cubes and cylinders, including your do now, like the first teacup you drew, and the final product, and like the last teacup you drew. So yeah, just like take a picture of that. We know that some of you have scanners, which is really great. So if you have a scanner, please use your scanner. And if you don't have a scanner, it's okay, because you can use a phone or a tablet or anything with a camera, basically, to take a picture of your work, and then you can submit it onto the Google Classroom the way we explained it. Yeah, but do we have any questions? We can take questions now. Steffi, do you want to take questions or no? Or are people asking you questions? Okay, we can ask them out loud, I guess. Dana?
Okay. So instead of a teacup for my first drawing, I accidentally drew a teapot. Is that okay?
That's fine. Guys, is there anyone else that wants to ask a question? Well, not raising their hand. You can also ask in the chat now.
If there are no questions, I guess that's all for our class today. Next week we'll be learning perspective drawing. So we're going to start with linear perspective. So drawing buildings, drawing crosswalks, all that.
Yep. Thank you so much for coming today. Yeah, we'll be the last ones on this call. So bye everyone. Bye. Make sure to submit your assignments or your classwork. It's not really homework. It's just like, please do it before next. Yeah, due date for this is before next class, which is Wednesday.